Let's get real. If you're wondering when to liquidate your company, you are already on the edge. You're on thin ice. Waiting, hoping things will magically turn around might just be the worst financial mistake that you will ever make. It is time to face reality because sometimes closing up shop is the smartest move you can make. And in this video, I'm going to break down the signs that it's time to liquidate and close your company, and why it's a responsible choice, and how it could save you from personal liability, stress, spiraling debt, and sleepless nights. Listen, it's not an easy decision to make, but it's one you need to get right. My name is Worden, and I'm from Director First, and I've been where you're at. I had a business that overnight had the rug pulled from under it, and I should have really sought insolvency advice at the start. I wasn't well advised. I wanted to keep going. I had that never give up mentality. I've read loads of personal development books, I can't admit failure. It's going to get better. The reality was something different. So, one of the clearest signs that it's time to consider liquidation is when creditors start ramping up their pressure, especially if they're threatening or they're initiating something called a winding up petition. Now, a winding up petition is the ultimate tool a creditor will use to force a company into liquidation. And when a creditor believes there's no other way to recover what's owed, they may apply to the court for a winding up petition. And if it's approved, it effectively forces the company into a compulsory liquidation. Now, a winding up petition is a legal action taken by creditors when they believe a company cannot pay its debts. Now, if they submit a petition to the court, it's their way of saying this company's insolvent and we want it liquidating because they're not dealing with our constant chases for money. Now, if the court grants the petition, your company is essentially, you're served a winding up petition, it's advertised in the courts, your bank accounts are frozen, and you get wound up. You've lost control. There are serious consequences of a winding up petition because once it's issued, it's advertised in the Gazette, it can devastate your company's reputation. Other creditors might see the petition and jump on it as well and it creates a snowball effect that can cause your entire business to collapse in a matter of weeks, and I see it all the time. Plus, obviously I mentioned that a petition can lead to your bank account being frozen. It halts cash flow and makes it nearly impossible to operate. You can't pay your staff, can't pay suppliers, you've got no way of paying operational expenses. It brings a business to a sudden halt. And what I deal with a lot is the emotional and financial toll of dealing with this stuff. Because once you face a petition, it can be incredibly stressful. Because once it's filed, you're dealing with the threat of forced closure. And if you're unprepared, the impact on your finances, not just your business, but your personal and your mental well-being can be overwhelming. So, how do you avoid the catastrophic impact of a petition? Well, the best action is to get early intervention. If a creditor is putting pressure on you, especially through demand letters or statutory demands, don't ignore them. Reach out to somebody like me and discuss options like a voluntary liquidation. A voluntary liquidation is a formal process that shows you're taking control and, most importantly, you're acting responsibly. Because if you opt for a voluntary liquidation, you avoid the public exposure of a winding up petition. And you basically go out there and you find somebody that you want to work with. Remember, a proactive approach, it could save company assets, personal assets, and severe repercussions of a forced liquidation. In my experience, a voluntary liquidation gives you some control, and it always produces a better outcome than a forced compulsory liquidation. Another sign is you've got mounting debts with no clear path to pay them. Now, If your company debts are stacking up faster than you can repay them, and you've got no plan or revenue stream to cover them, it's a huge warning sign. It's not about a single bad quarter or a seasonal dip in cash flow. I'm talking about long-term situations where debt is becoming a permanent part of your business operations, and you're always scrambling to cover interest payments, let alone repay the principal. Like, there are signs it's unmanageable. If your suppliers are putting you on cash only terms, or lenders that you're using are refusing further credit, it's a clear sign that the business is no longer financially stable. And when you're in that cycle of debt with no exit in sight, it's time to start seriously considering liquidation. A liquidation in most cases can actually protect you and your creditors. If you work with an insolvency professional, you can take an organised approach to addressing this situation. Like a liquidation, when you go into liquidation, your creditors then stop chasing you and start speaking to the insolvency practitioner. And what it does, it allows you to walk away without the ongoing burden of the mounting business debt. It's not about giving up. Sometimes just a good strategic decision to prevent even more financial harm and, in most cases, emotional harm. Another sign that it's time to liquidate a business is you've got personal guarantees you can't fulfill. Now, if you've taken out loans or signed contracts that you've signed a personal guarantee, and this can be a pretty standard request from lenders or suppliers, you probably thought when you signed it the business would always cover the obligation. But if you're failing, these guarantees are going to fall directly on you. And in other words, if the company can't pay, they're going to come after you and your personal assets. Now, I believe they're really risky because a personal guarantee overrides limited liability, and that's the shield that protects a director. A creditor will pursue your personal assets, your home, your savings, any investments, and that's if the company fails. Now, liquidation doesn't eliminate a personal guarantee. I want to be really clear with you. But what it does do is create an environment where you can address them. And most creditors will agree to some type of settlement. Some will agree to a reduced settlement. Some will allow you to pay over a longer period of time. But once you're in liquidation and there is some finality to the company, you can start to get your head in gear of dealing with the personal guarantees. Now, if you're struggling with PGs, get in touch with us. We can help you. Part of our extended team specialise in dealing with personal guarantees. And if you sort of take the steps we're talking about, it shows you being proactive. Now, if you're insolvent and you continue to trade, okay, so your company can't pay its debts when they fall due, liabilities are more than your assets, and you're still trading, you're walking a very dangerous tightrope, because insolvency means that your liabilities exceed your assets or you can't pay that VAT bill. If you continue to trade in this situation, it can be considered something called wrongful trading, and it can put you at serious risk of personal liability for any debts that you've incurred while you're insolvent. And the reason why it's risky is because it carries severe penalties. It basically means you've knowingly put creditors' money at risk. And a liquidator is trained to look at this stuff. They're going to review financial records, and if they find out you've incurred debts long after you've become insolvent, they can and do hold directors personally liable. So if you go into liquidation, you enter liquidation, you're ceasing operations in an organised manner rather than allowing debt to continue to pile up. A liquidation will allow you to work with an insolvency practitioner to manage the process fairly, and again it helps you protect from wrongful trading. I get a lot of people saying, Chris, it seems too easy. And when you're insolvent, it's actually in most cases the right thing to do. we've got to look at why you've got into this position. But actually, insolvency is the sort of the next logical step when you can't pay your debts. You know, sign number 5 is you've just got no cash flow. It's not improving. I say it on every video. Cash flow is the lifeblood of any business. And when it starts drying up, you know you're in trouble. Now, the cash flow issues are common, you know, in all types of businesses, especially seasonal ones. But when you've exhausted all reasonable options, such as loans, asset sales, reducing expenses, trying to increase sales, and there's no improvement, then it might be time to consider liquidating. If cash flow is a chronic, recurring issue, if it's consistently so low that you can't cover essentials like VAT, corporation tax, payroll, rent, there's no realistic hope of that changing. And if that's the case, your business isn't sustainable in its current state. And liquidation can help resolve the company's issues instead of continuing scrambling for cash. It's an organised process. It helps prevent further liabilities. And in, I'd say 99% of cases, it's going to offer you some relief from the stress that you're going through. Listen, number 6 is you've got a negative balance sheet. And your balance sheet shows, if it shows your liabilities exceed your assets, it's a major red flag that your business is no longer financially healthy. And when you're operating at a deficit, it's really important that either you secure some new funding or you start to build up your credit rating again, or attract investment, or potentially close it down. Because people can see you've got a negative balance sheet. They're not going to lend you any more money. They're not going to allow you to keep supplying. A liquidation in this scenario will show your creditor that you're addressing the business's inability to meet its obligations. Now, a liquidation can, again, it's an orderly wind down, and sometimes it allows you to get a fresh start without the legacy debt. If you was to go into a pre-pack and form a new business to buy the assets of the insolvent business, it happens all the time. So there you have it. A number of signs that it's time to liquidate your limited company. I know this decision isn't easy, but sometimes it's the best, most responsible choice you can make for your financial future. Again, it doesn't mean failure. It means taking control and handling things in a fair, structured way that hopefully will allow you to move forward. If any of these sound familiar, don't wait, get in touch with us. At Director First, we're here to help UK directors navigate these difficult choices with clarity and support. Hit the subscribe button. Thanks for your time. Chris Worden, all the best.